Welcome to what they call all new Mazda's CX-70 all-wheel drive. Yes, but is it really? I'm telling you, this is one of the more bizarre things that I've seen in a while, and I've seen some bizarre things lately. But this is, in fact, Mazda's new midsize SUV, the CX-70. And the thing that's so strange about it is it's a CX-90, really, with one fewer row of seating. Instead of being a 3-row, it's a 2-row. But everything else on this vehicle, the drivetrain, the chassis, pretty much everything is identical to the CX-90, which we already like because it's powered by a brand new inline 6-cylinder turbocharged engine that has prodigious power. And it also has pretty decent fuel economy. So let's take a look and see what the heck Mazda's up to this time, because they do like to do things differently. Don't you think? Come with me. Inline Six. This may be the most amazing engine that Mazda's produced for a while, but let's think back though. This was the only company that had a production version sports car that had a rotary engine in it for years and years. There were good and bad things about that, but they're not afraid at all to boldly go where few or any have gone before. And with this new 6-cylinder engine, they have gotten rid of the V6 and decided to do something similar to what Stellantis has done with the Jeep and the Ram inline turbocharged 6-cylinder engines. And they've decided to go that route instead of the V6. A lot of interesting things about that. Mainly, you're talking about very similar displacement engines. In this case, this is a 3.3 liter turbo. And like the V6 that this thing is kind of replacing, even though this vehicle didn't exist back when it would have had a V6 in it. It takes up about the same kind of mass, but it's packaged differently because instead of having 3 cylinders and 3 cylinders arrayed in a V formation, it's one inline 6, straight line of 6 cylinders, but about the same displacement. But more power. I mean, this is a powerful thing with its turbocharging. Now let's take a look at this wheelbase. Again, this is absolutely, I was expecting the CX-90 to actually have a longer wheelbase because it's a 90 and this is only a 70. I mean, doesn't that make sense to you? But the fact of the matter is it has exactly the same wheelbase as the CX-90, which is 122.8 inches. Everything else, as far as the exterior dimensions, is exactly the same. It's the same chassis. It's the same engine. It's the same transmission. It's the same everything except for some different touches. And I do believe the base model CX-70 has more standard equipment on it than the CX-90. I'm not positive about that, but I believe that to be true. But as you can see, this is not a small vehicle, and when you call it a midsize, it's heading towards full-size territory. And the CX-90 was very good in terms of room, especially with that 3rd row. It had a good 3rd row on it. But this thing is very different because you don't have that 3rd row. You just have a great big cargo area. And why they didn't just make this a different version of the CX-90, who knows? I mean, it's all about horse and rider is one, Genya Itu or whatever it is, and your Sky Actives and everything. Like I said, Mazda likes to go their own way with everything. And from a design standpoint, They remind me of Hyundai in that they have done a magnificent job of beautiful styling for their vehicles, and yet there is a very definite family resemblance between them all. So when you're getting a Mazda, you know it's a Mazda from a good ways away because of the way it looks. And they've also optimized the interior room while not compromising that beautiful styling. So I like it, I like it. But it just seems so strange to me to build what they're considering to be an entirely different model that's basically identical to an entirely not different model. I mean, why did they do this? Well, it's a way of, I think, satisfying the needs of whatever you need. If you really don't need a 3-row, but you'd love to have all that cargo room, this is the vehicle for you. And without further ado, though, it's luring me in because I'm totally fascinated by this new 6-cylinder engine. And there's a few other things about it that are very unique. So let's dig in right away and let's have a look at what's underneath this hood here. There she is! Wow, look at there. There is our engine somewhere. Now, it looks like we have a small serving table. We don't really have an engine. But there is an engine in there. And not only that, here's a real shocker for you. There's an electric motor too. There is actual a lithium-ion battery-powered electric motor that is kind of a little bit of an assist. And I'll get into the details of how much assistance it actually offers in a momento. But we can, if we do this, we can actually lift up this cover here. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Hang on a minute. Allow me to edit. Do you see what I've done here? Now, underneath this this engine cover, you have this little strap and this little connector, and you connect it right up in here. So you can actually gaze upon the inline 6-cylinder engine with all its turbocharging. Now, how many turbos do we have? Well, there's a great big one over here. Here's your exhaust side. So here's your turbo center is right alongside this cylinder bank, because after all, this engine is mounted longitudinally, lengthwise, that way. Oh my God, I'm being bombarded by an airplane. This is kind of a fascinating setup because on the passenger side of the vehicle is where all this heat is generated from your exhaust manifold, and that then goes through your turbocharger and it pumps up the air, and here is your air supply right down there, going all the way down there. It goes behind the engine, and somehow it gets around to the front of the engine for the intercooling process, because as we know, whenever you compress the engine through turbocharging, it heats it up, so you got to cool it back down again. And then over here is our injection system. Now, one thing I don't know, there's nothing on this that implies that it has gasoline direct injection. It just says electronic fuel injection in the specifications. So I'm guessing that it's port injection, but it could have both, could have GDI. I have no idea. It doesn't really say. Mazda doesn't say. It doesn't prominently call this a Skyactiv engine either, which I'm not sure if that's just a marketing thing or what that means. But as you can see, we don't have any real dramatic indicators here. It's so bizarre looking down at this, because you got a bolt, a belt down there. It says "Made in China" prominently on it. So that's be your Chinese belt that drives some of your accessories and stuff, including, I believe, your water pump down there. So I don't know how much electric use there is as far as the engine is concerned by our electric motor system. Now, as you can see, there are no prominent orange cables up here, which you always have, I believe, by law, to let the firefighters and everybody know that's high voltage line going through there. But I don't see anything. But this thing does, in fact, have an electric motor. Now let me grab my specifications here. We'll back up. Okay, our engine. It puts out by itself 340 horsepower at 5,000 RPM. Not bad. And then the torque rating is, where's my torque? There's horsepower, there's a... Oh, by the way, did I mention it's lithium-ion powered? I believe I did, our electric side of things. The boost that you get from the electric motor is 16.6 horsepower at 900 RPM, which is very interesting. And for some reason, I'm looking here and I don't see my torque value. Did I forget to put the torque value? I did in my notes. God, that's weird because torque is everything. Well, anyway, I'll put it at the bottom of the screen. You're looking at it right now. That is your torque value. I'm sure it's 400, something like that, pounds of feet, but it's a very torquey engine. That's one of the things that, just in natural aspiration without the turbocharging inline sixes, are usually pretty good with that, with their low-end torque generation. But anyway, so look at all the cooling systems you have. I'm assuming that this guy over here is probably for your intercooler. That's part of your intercooler coolant supply, and this is probably the engine supply right here, and I could have that completely reversed, but way over here towards the end of the fender is where we put in our washer fluid, and right there, as you can clearly see, we use 020 oil, which is extremely common. Thank you, Mazda, good move. And behind that is your dipstick, and also always refreshing these days to see an engine with a dipstick, because they just don't have them very often. Airbox going into our turbocharging system, and to the ultimately is the supply for the regular fuel injection as well. So this is their new beauty. This is their new inline six-cylinder engine that Mazda is very proud of, and it's a very, very substantial amount of engine to put in a vehicle that's just a two-row SUV when you think about it, but that's what they decided to do. And if you're not going your three-row route with your CX-90, you got your CX-70 now that you can consider it to be a little bit sportier. Now, one thing I found very interesting is the curb weight. The curb weight of this vehicle is 4,863 pounds, and the curb weight of the CX-90 is 4,899 pounds. So almost exactly the same curb weight. And that's just, I guess, the slight addition to the CX-90 is merely that third row seat that takes up a little bit of weight, but not much. So what is our little electric assist for? Well, primarily when you leave the line, as it were, even though this is turbocharged, and even though, like I said, a lot of times, well, it depends on the engine. I mean, that's an overstatement on my part to say that inline sixes usually have a lot of low-end grunt, but the electric helps with that to even give you further and smoother liftoff, if you will, when you're leaving from a standing stop. And it also does a few other things. Does it help with fuel economy? I believe it does. In stop-and-go traffic, it probably does quite a bit. The lithium-ion battery itself is in the back, which I will show to you in just a minute. But there you go. That's our new inline six-cylinder engine that you've seen all this before when I reviewed the CX-90 when it came out last year. So interesting. I'm imagining there's a few little tweaks that have been done here and there, because once they get a model out and let the public start driving it, they're going to break things. The public always breaks things. So what are you going to do with that? Well, you'll fix whatever's broken, and you'll put some refinements in as you go along. Now let's see if I can, oh, there we go. I'll disconnect that there. Then you flow this down in here, and you plug it back up here, like that. You squeeze that, put that in. I'm doing all this one-handed. Can he do it? Yes, yes. There we go. All right, and then here we go. Turn that, and there we are. Your engine's gone. Where'd it go? It's underneath there. All right, so let's move on and look at the, let us look at the running chassis from an exterior point of view and pretend we're not actually looking at a CX-90. This CX-70 has one of my favorite tires, It's a Falcon ZX. You see, ZIEX. I love that name for reasons I can't explain. I just do. This is the ZX CT60 R or A/S. It's an all-terrain tire. And how big are these wheels? Well, tire size is 275/45 R21, so we got 21-inch wheels, which is huge. I mean, it's a big vehicle. Let's not kid ourselves. This is not a small vehicle at all. It is quite substantially large. But you know, it looks good. It fits the lines of the vehicle very, very well. The only thing I have to complain about is a lot of times the ride gets rougher the bigger the wheels. And this doesn't have a rough ride at all, but I can't help but wonder if it would be a little bit smoother if we had like, oh, I don't know, 17, 18s. But then I guess it would look weird. So and the public seems to really enjoy their larger wheels these days. But there's our nice long wheelbase and our beautiful, I love the fact that you can just see from here how much cargo room you have, because you are armed with the knowledge that this only has 2 rows of seats. So this entire tail end here is devoted to just to cargo space, as you're going to see in just a second. And as we roll around here, where is our exhaust pipes? Huh? Gosh, I don't see any. I guess it doesn't have any. They are really well concealed, giving the illusion of full electric. Could that be a harbinger of the future? I have no idea, but there are harbingers, as you know. So take a look at this. You can tell this was originally designed to be a 3-row vehicle, because look at all the space you have right here. This is incredible, really. And the space you're looking at, hang on a minute, let me get my notes here. You're looking at, with the seats deployed in the back, almost just shy of 40 cubic feet of space. That is pretty amazing. Just when many vehicles are compromising a lot of room to insist that they have a 3rd row, if you don't want one and you don't need one, that's what you get. Now, what is really strange about this is it's not very deep by comparison to a lot of vehicles. It's the distance from the load floor up to the ceiling is not as great as on most vehicles like this, which I find a bit surprising. So the question is this part of the structure for the 3rd row, or what's underneath here? Well, we got our standard accoutrements. I don't see any spare tire, but somewhere underneath here is where our lithium-ion battery is for our motor assist. And as you can see, we have, it looks like 60-40, but looks more like 30-70 to me, or maybe even 80-20, I don't know. But we have this very convenient button right there that folds forward like that. Look at that. Oops. Somebody had the front seat all the way back. I don't know who done that, but I'm going to catch up with them eventually. But that's now, if that seat was flat, which it would be, you would be looking at 75.3 cubic feet of space. Now that's interesting to me, because I was actually expecting that number to be higher. But there's no reason for it to be. It would be the same as if you're folding 3 rows instead of 2 rows. I mean, man. And what else do we have here? There's a big storage bin. Can you see that underneath there? It's quite a bit. Fold that forward like that. I'm going to just start ripping into stuff here. There we go. And look at there. We have a temporary spare tire. Excellent, thank you, Mazda. So I was expecting that they probably did, and it does. So it's very nicely finished back here, and like I said, this is actually very convenient if you're loading in at your depot of homes, or you can just press that button, and when you need more room for that longer bit of cargo that you're hauling with you, that whatever it is, that new little giant ladder or something that you've just purchased. So it's cargo, except this is a really high load floor. As a matter of fact, it comes up, I'm 5'8", and it comes up to my to my lower crotchal area, or a little bit more, and it would almost be up to my waist. So it's a very high lift over. And again, it depends on what kind of cargo you have. Sometimes that can actually be easier on your back if it's higher up like that when you're loading up. But our power gate is standard issue. And there we are. So we'll be digging around in that rear drivetrain. Now the question you're asking is, does that rear drivetrain have any kind of an electrical component to it? I doubt it. Not with only 16 horsepower available. It's probably a conventional system, but we'll see. But it is, they're very proud of their all-wheel drive system at Mazda, and they should be, because it works very seamless and it can get you out of some scrapes. It's very, very good in snowy weather, if we ever have any again. But there we are. I tell you, those wheels look natural on there. And there's no real big penalty other than, like I said, a possible reduction of ride quality, but not by much. It's not going to be a huge deal. So anyway, with less ado than most, we'll now go into the interior and have a look at what Mazda has for us. In some included rendezvous. Well, here we have the interior of our CX-70. And in typical Mazda fashion, their instrument cluster is beautiful. It mimics the appearance of an analog system, of course, because it is analog instrumentation, but it mimics the look of a mechanical version. But this is all touchscreen display, except you don't touch this part here. This is not touchable here. And it's a beautiful piece of work in terms of clarity. I really like it. There is the option, if you're so inclined, of having your, let me go home here and go to settings. If you want to have a heads-up display, which a lot of people like, and they don't call it that, by the way. Mazda calls it an active driving display. We'll turn that on for you. There we are. Can you see that? Can you see that? I don't even know if you can see it or not. But I am not a fan of these. I turn them off just like that. I've always found them to be annoying as hell, and the whole purpose behind it, I think, it doesn't do what it's supposed to, which is to let you keep your eyes on the road while you're driving and yet read things like the speed of the vehicle or whatever information. This system, along with a lot of other systems nowadays, you can put all kinds of information up there if you desire it. And this way you can still see the road around you while you're looking at it. But the fact is, in my opinion, that's not true, because when you focus on it to look at it, you're focusing on the front of the windshield and not everything else outside of it. So you really can't. I think they're useless, my opinion. But again, if you like it, if you love it, you got it. It's right here for you. And Mazda, about 1 or 2 vehicle cycles ago, decided to finally do something which was driving me crazy. They fixed it. And what it was your active driving display was the default on system every time you started the car. So you had to go through a series of menus like these here, and you had to turn it off that way. But this way, when you turn it off, it stays off. Beautiful. I love it. I love it. You'll see a few other things that are turned off here. My lane deviation and lanes, whatever this stuff is that's trying to keep you safe and keep you in your lane. I have a real problem, and I mentioned this during the driving segments, at least one of them, that I don't like the fact that when we have our electric power steering now, this is what allows these systems to steer the car, is the fact that they're electrically powered. And I don't like any kind of resistance on the steering wheel that I didn't create.
I don't mind resistance as it has to do with the feel of the steering when you're going over certain terrain or when you're in cornering and you're starting to break traction in the front, all that kind of stuff. I like that feel. That's very, very important. But I don't like to wrestle with an electric motor when it's trying to do something I don't want it to do. So again, food for thought. The safety aspect of it, I'll let you evaluate that for your own personal situation. You may like that and may want that system, in which case you can turn it on. But if you turn it off, you get these annoying little guys right there to tell you constantly that you've turned it off. Yeah, I know I've turned it off, but what are you going to do? But anyway, while we're up here, let's talk about our MI drive modes. And here we go here. We're on sport, normal, off-road, and I thought there was a towing setting on here. According to the owner's manual there is, but I see none. So maybe that's part of a towing package? I have no idea. This thing is supposed to be able to tow. What is the figure here? Hang on with it. Stay with me. Stay with me. 5,000 pounds with a brake trailer, but I think you have to have a tow package or something, because there is no setting here for towing. Like I said, there is just sport, which it goes all red like they always do when you go sport. And then you have normal, which is still red. There we go. There's our normal setting. And if we go off-road, it doesn't look like it changed. There we go. That's much more off-roady. And it's nice because it gives you on the right side, instead of you have a digital speedometer, but on the right side you also have a temperature gauge and your fuel and everything right there on the right side. If we go back to normal, what do we got over there? Ah, the same thing. It's just slightly different. Figure that one out. So you don't have an enormous amount of options as far as the appearance of your instrument cluster, which I'm fine with because I think it's a very good cluster the way it is. There is information that you can seek over here. Eye active status. It's acting like it has every one of the activated systems as far as your safety systems turned on, but it doesn't. I'm not sure what in the world that is actually telling me. It's telling me I've been getting 24.1 miles per gallon, which is very good. Well, it's very, well, for this size vehicle, actually, you got to consider this is the physical dimensions of the CX-70, which is a 3-row, and this is just a 2-row with a whole lot of cargo capacity. So it's not a small vehicle, and 24 is good, and we do have the partial hybrid situation. And there's our compass, and then there's nothing. So we'll leave on, what? I'll leave compass up there, what the heck. So anyway, we have, this mild hybrid system is really interesting because it doesn't add a hell of a lot of power, as I mentioned before, but it does help out. I mean, there's no question about it. 16 horsepower is 16 horsepower. And it helps smooth over the lower process where you have, still to this day, turbochargers require to get spun up in order to deliver power. And they've done amazing things with turbocharging in that they can get the power to come on much, much lower in the RPM range than they used to be able to. But still, there's some gaps in there, and having that electric assist, which is, it's also very popular with the Toyota iForce Max situations, to fill in that lower part of the rev range with that good, plentiful torque that comes off an electric motor. So that's that. So what do we have control-wise? Let us continue. We'll go all the way over here. We have, this is a warning on and off right here that keeps certain warnings quiet if you want. You can mute them. Here's our parking off. We have all these parking sensors also, that there may be circumstances under which that you're going through a real brushy situation on I don't know, a logging trail or something like that, and you just want to turn off because it's constantly beeping at you because of all the tree limbs and the little bushes that are trying to interfere with your progress. So you can turn that off if it's annoying. This is your traction control system. You can turn that off as well. And then we have iStop. Intelligent Stop. Intelligent Stop is, honest to God, the owner's manual in this vehicle is like as thick as a whale omelet. It's not, if in the old days when we had phone books, it's not phone book thick, but it's huge because there is so much going on with all the electronic assists. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but I mean, that's just the age we're living in now. And so there's all kinds of cancellation features and stuff that you can or can't access depending on what they are. And this particular one lets you turn off these various ones easily, just, oops, sorry, with just a turn, or the poke of a switch. This is our automatic gate in the back. We can open and close it because it's in fact powered. So, like almost all lift gates are getting that way, which is another interesting thing. You have two different settings. You can lock in your seat adjustment so that if driver 1 or driver 2 is in the car, they can just press that and it will assume the position that particular driver prefers. Ah, God, it's been a long millennium. Here we go. Here is our, I love this. This is our power. Normally, these things are only on the very top of the line type of luxury situations, which I guess this is the top of the line of this vehicle. But to have a power actuated steering adjust is great fun and good to have. Left side here, what do we have here? Well, we have some radio controls. You can go in and put favorites into the system. It's not as easy as it should be. You can change the source, you can mute, you can volume up and down, everything right here at your thumb. And we also, of course, have our telephone information here. And this is what I was pressing earlier when I was changing that right instrument over here in the middle there to adjust that particular delivery of information. To the right, this is our cruise control zone, where you have our following distance on our adaptive cruise control, and our plus and minus setting the speed, and our resume button, and our cancel button over here. And down here is where we have lane steering, so you can achieve lane steering without you actually putting in the input. The car will steer itself, provided your hands are still on the wheel somewhere. And this is our on-off for our cruise control, and there's two different modes to that, I believe, if I remember right. I don't know. The cruise control on this car has been a little on the vexing side because there's times I like to disconnect and turn on and off the steering as far as lane centering and that kind of thing that's going on during the adaptive cruise control. But sometimes I just want to turn that off, but when you turn it off using this button right here, it also turns off the cruise control. So these are like two different cruise control buttons. This is like purely adaptive, and this is adaptive with steering. So look at it that way if you so desire. All right, moving on. Here is our center display, and our center display is also extremely sharp. I really love the fact it's of course your landscape mode, and it's a widescreen landscape, and it's also beautifully sharp high definition stuff. And you can zoom in and zoom out your nav system. Your nav system is an onboard system, which I approve highly of. And it's also 3D. You get down low enough there, you can get your third dimension. But very, very nice navigation system and an excellent touchscreen, one of the best I've seen in a while. And it's also nice and low so that you can see over it easily as you're driving, so it doesn't impede any of that vision. Because we got a few out there with the central touchscreen that are popping up high enough that they'll actually, they'll cause you a little bit of grief when it comes to getting up really close to things when you're parking, because you got to look over the screen to see it, especially shorter drivers. I've had a lady that is of very, very petite size, and she told me that's the latest thing. She's always had a problem in cars with getting the seat adjusted just right so that she can see adequately. And this is just another obstacle she has to overcome in order to see out of the car, which is ridiculous, but there you go. That's the age we live in. Okay, drop down, and we have our climate control system. This is great because you have 10 million buttons here, which is nice because you can do all kinds of different things. We have a heated steering, by the way, and we have our heated seat, and we have our cooled seat. See how they did that? It's yellow for your heat and blue for your cooling. Works great, very, very easy. This is on the automatic system, you can, which is on now. Well, that's interesting. When I turned it on automatic, it popped up. It seems to have sensors everywhere, so it knows that the seats are still kind of cold. It's cold outside. It's in the 30s, so interesting. Well, I'll turn those off then. But anyway, you can adjust your temperature. You can adjust it for two zones, front zones separately. Your passenger and your driver can really fine-tune the temperature to their own liking, which is nice, and pretty much commonplace these days. But very straightforward and easy to locate and operate while you're driving. You don't have to go through the center touch screen with a whole bunch of menu items and everything else. So that's great. Here's our MI drive, which I was playing with before, which is our drive modes. And like I said, I'm a little confused about the situation with the tow mode because I thought it had one, but maybe I have to be in some other mode to go to the tow mode. Maybe I have to be driving along. I have no idea. You know, it's artificial unintelligence that I have on my person. So here's our shifter. Now our shifter is a little on the, I've heard the term bulky, and I think that's a real good term for it because it's a little awkward to use. You get used to it, but as you can see, you press the button down and you got reverse, neutral, and drive. That's all straightforward enough. But going in the park, you got to pop it over to here. And for some reason, there's been a time or two that I've parked the car and I did that and it wasn't actually in park, even though it looked like it was in park. So that's just something you kind of have to get used to. I don't think there's a problem with it really, but it's just the way it does things. Here is our hill descent. So if you're on a real steep trail and you want to go down and concentrate on your steering instead of braking all the time, the vehicle will brake for you to keep the speed at a very low speed, using the traction control system as much as anything else. If anything starts to slide a little bit, it tries to compensate for that. So very popular, very commonplace these days. Some of them work really well, some of them don't. I haven't really tested this one out yet. I don't know if I will on this particular adventure, just because I don't know if I'm going to be in a situation where I can. But anyway, now this is one of my favorite buttons. Here's your cameras. We do have cameras all over the place. And I push the camera button and look at all our options. On the right side, you see the 360 degrees. And right now it's looking straight in front of us. Here's our side cameras. We can put that on. We can put that on. Okay, we have to use by the way, there's a command controller here that you have to deal with. There we go. There we go. Okay, there's our side cameras. And as you can see, very, very accurate in terms of, there's leaves below the car. That's good to know. This is what it was on, it's weird, the front and the back look kind of similar. So what are we looking at here? Well, here's our front and here's our wide front. So we have two different front views. Isn't that interesting? Now, how do we get to the rear view? Well, I think the only way to get to the rear view is, isn't that something? I guess you have to be in reverse. Let's put her in reverse, shall we? We're now in reverse. Okay, now, oh, look. We have two different sizes on reverse, too. We have the wide angle, and then we have a little bit tighter, more detailed, and very, very close to the rear bumper there. So, but that's when we get our reverse. If we're not in reverse, we get those other cameras to pick from. So, very useful. The only problem about the camera systems that we're seeing nowadays, the 360 in particular, is there's a total of 6 cameras, I believe. Maybe actually on this vehicle, I take that back. I think there's 4. But there is a camera that is located in the mirror. And mirrors, if you knock your mirror off, I advise you not to do that, because it will eat up your whole $500 or whatever deductible you have on your insurance, provided that you have comprehensive and it was your fault. Or not comprehensive, it's collision, isn't it? Well, anyway, these are very expensive items to replace now. It's like kind of like headlights. Headlights and rearview mirrors on vehicles have gotten astronomically expensive because they have so much stuff in them. They have the sensors that you use for your blind spot warning are actually located in the rear bumper, but you have the wiring and everything else, plus the display marker and all that stuff that's wired into your side mirror. You also have the motors to steer the mirror around when you're adjusting it, and then you have a camera that's also operating from that point usually, and all these things add up, and that's why be careful with your mirrors, folks. Treat your mirrors well, because they'll hit you hard in the pocket if you have to have them replaced. So, important to remember. All right, we'll take the cameras off there. And back to our control center here. Here you have your park brake, which is the electronic variety. Then we have auto hold, which is, if you turn auto hold on, it's blinking. Why is it blinking? I've forgotten exactly how to do it. I think you hit auto hold and do that. Anyway, what it primarily does is if you stop on a hill, and it keeps the vehicle from rolling back, and some people like it, some people don't. Kind of like the hill holder clutch of the Subarus of old. I don't know if maybe they still have a hill holder clutch. I haven't driven a manual transmission Subaru in a little while, so. But anyway, a nice safety feature, and it's up to you whether or not you use it. So you can pick and choose. Our command controller is flanked, mind you, by music. If I want to go to music, I go there, and that'll tell me what I'm listening to. And right now, it's not picking up my Sirius signal, so that's fine. Then we have our home button, which actually will move around a lot of different areas. The home button here gives you anything you want. Now, what's our information tell us? Fuel efficiency monitor. What is it saying? And see, here's, by the way, a little graphic of where our electric motor is apparently at the aft end, since the engine is running longitudinally. Thank you. God, I feel like I've got one of them magic chalkboard things. I-stop and hybrid boost and everything else. And that's what we're, right now we are charging. The engine is charging the hybrid battery, going through the motor, and this is, I guess, being turned into a generator to put power into the hybrid battery, which is pretty damn low, actually. But total time and regenerative energy and all that for the particular drive that you're on. So there you go. And we also have a backspace, and we have this navigation button. So all that's just so you can instantly get to that particular area and fine-tune it using the command controller thingy. This is our on-off and volume for our stereo system. And this star right here is something you can select. You can put that, there's a number of choices where you can pick what you want this particular star to do. So you can have, if you have a function that you use regularly that's not easily accessible by a button, there's a chance that you may be able to set it with that. And so that's good to have. And that's something that is becoming also increasingly common on cars across the board. Over here is our seat, our passenger seat. And these finely sheathed things that have great support, really nice seating, and heating and cooling, as I mentioned, are covered with leather from Nepal. Or it's called Napa leather, I'm not real sure. But you have a lot of leather in this car. You have these wonderful seats, and then you have a lot in the, this is a felt actually, kind of like a micro felt. But I think there's some leather, that's plastic. There's a lot of leather throughout this car, and the overall level of trim in this vehicle is quite nice, since this is, after all, the Turbo S Premium Plus, which I think is as good as it gets. I believe that's the top trim line. So what else? Well, we have our controls up here for our dome lights and everything else, and we have a nice panoramic sunroof, which the top section here, the section right here, you can open completely. The rest is just a nice visual for your passengers back there. And you have a power sunshade that completely seals that off if you don't want any kind of sunlight to shine on you, like you're carrying around, you know, your kids have turned into vampires or something like that. So you got that. Then we have, look here. There is our very, well, it's not all that shallow, but reasonably shallow center console with your USB-C ports right there. By the way, you have a 12-volt port right there for those of you that require one. Glove box. How roomy is it? Very roomy. It can swallow that enormous owner's manual I was talking about earlier, so, you know, that should tell you everything you need to know about that. And with that, let's have a look in this back seat. Because like I said, this is the same chassis and everything else on the 3-row CX-70. And you can see we have a very substantial... how are you? I'm Mr. Shadow. This is very, very easy to access. Look at that. That is 90 degrees that the door opens. Very nice. And then we have our fairly roomy rear seats that offer you some very nice adjustments. It's not power, but you have manual adjustments. There we go. And I'm reclined now slightly. Plenty of leg room, as you can see. For my 5'8" frame, it's very good. We have window shades. How nice. I do like that. And how far does our window go down? Ooh, look at that. That's as far as she goes, man. So I'd say that's about 85%. That's interesting. I would have thought with the size of this door, that window would go all the way down, but it doesn't. There's something to know. Dome light. Very nice. Then we have our own controls back here. First of all, very convenient access to your USB-C ports. And here we have heated outboard seats, which is great. Always nice to have that in the back seats, like people are considering you. And back here you can turn this on and off as far as your own personal. If I want it even hotter back here, I can do this, you see, and it'll be even warmer back here. Nice, nice. Again, consideration for your rear seat passengers who and they don't have to worry about, in this vehicle, in the CX-70, about people behind them kicking them and stuff like that in the third row and doing all kinds of third row things like pulling your hair, you know the stuff that goes on. You don't have to worry about any of that because it's a 2-row seat situation. Now here is our armrest, which is fairly, I'd say almost a perfect angle. It's a little bit lower than a lot, but it's comfortable. I mean, I think they really thought this out quite well. Sky Active. It's a Sky Active thing with Mazda. And again, as you can see, I have reclined, and this is a 60/40 setup. So, and I believe this is still your Napa leather on here. I don't think this is a synthetic, but I could be wrong about that. If I am, you'll see it at the bottom of the screen, and I am once again in error. But what else can I tell you about the back seat? Plenty of headroom, plenty of leg room, plenty of adjustability, and guess what? You can forward and back the sucker. Whee, whee. So you have a fair amount of adjustment for your rear seat passengers. Got a speaker right here for your fine. I believe this is a Bose sound system. Are you a Bose sound system? I think you are. It sounds great, by the way. It's a very, very good sound system on this thing. So what else can I tell you? It's very comfortable in the second row. And you got something that no other vehicle in this class, which is the 5-seat class or the 2-row class, has in as much abundance as you have this massive amount of cargo space back here. So I could see this being, if you were really, let's say you're living in a state that gets some snow and you have an Uber operation or something like that, and you spend a lot of time taking people to the airport and back, This would be a real good vehicle as long as they don't have too many passengers. If you have 2 passengers, that's perfect, because they could sit back here and you could get all their luggage in the cargo area, no problem. And you got all-wheel drive to take you there, and what else do you need? I mean, this is and you got all the creature comforts. It's quiet. It has a good ride on it and everything else. It's a good all-around vehicle. It's a Mazda, man. I mean, what do you want? They make good cars. So there we are. There's our CX-70 interior for your entertainment pleasure, and hopefully consideration if you're in the market. Well, this should be fun. We've got a lot of ice on underneath our tires. Let's see how this thing does with all the ice on the tires. Strange noises coming from this car. Ding, ding. There we go. No problem. No problem. Actually, at least 2 of the tires was in a pretty decent traction situation. Therefore, it was not, you know, a problem I've seen now a couple of times is, Jesus. A problem I have noticed a couple of times is the vehicle says it's in park and it's not in park, and it won't let you start the car and everything else because you put the vehicle in park in order to start the car. Well, it says it's in park. I've put it in park. You come over and you slide it over. I don't know about that. I don't know what that all means, but it's something they should address, because I think I'm not the only person who has experienced that. I think good friends at Consumer Reports noted something about this shifter being a little, I can't remember the terminology they used. I think they said bulky, possibly, which I think is very apt. Apt use of the word bulky, if that's what I actually had. All right. And again, this is a real nice strong engine, this straight 6, but it should be noted, it's not, again, I don't think it's refined as the V6 it replaces. It's not as smooth. It's not bad. It's certainly, this is the second one I've had, and the first one was, of course, on the CX-90, and this one seems a little bit more refined. What sounded like I have a window open almost, but I don't. Huh, let's try that. We'll close that. Oh, I know what it is. It's just the heater. That's all that is. Just the heater. It kicked on once the engine got up to temperature, because it is 28 degrees outside, so it is forgiven for doing its thing. But I haven't experienced steering in a while like this vehicle, because it does seem sometimes, for some reason, I think back to several years ago, a Nissan Rogue I had, that the power steering boost was a bit weird. This one seems all right now. Earlier when I was driving it, it was doing some strange things. In that, the only thing I mean by strange is that it didn't feel like it was just letting me drive the car, it seemed like it was trying to steer itself. And I have everything to do that turned off for the most part. And I say for the most part, because who knows? I have all these lights on right here, which I've showed you before, or will show you in a minute if you hadn't seen it before, that indicate these systems are turned off. Now our cruise control, unlike the last vehicle I had where everything was on the left side, it's on the right side. It's like a conundrum. There we are now set at 59 miles an hour, and I'm gonna hit the steering, see what happens, and see if we'll steer. So far it's not doing anything, which is good because we're going straight. But I had this experience. There we go. Now we are definitely steering. Now I'm going to throw something a little confusing at it. I'm going to throw a split lane all of a sudden. Which way will I imagine it'll just stay in this lane? Is it looking? It's searching. Yeah, it started to go a little bit this way and then came back to this lane, which is exactly what it should do. There's some cars that hit that exact spot that I just drove through when they are on automated driving or semi-autonomous driving, I should say, and it gets confused and it'll literally weave out, and in a couple of cases it'll just shut off the automatic steering and the cruise control, period. Shut the whole thing down and say, just wait a minute here. We don't understand what's going on. I put a little pressure on it, started to head a little bit this way, and it was giving me a prompt, which is interesting. No prompt necessary here. Now we're weaving over. Steering assist unavailable. Why? Oh, and then I hit it again, and it completely shuts off the cruise control. Every system is different, how these things work. Now I'm going back to full manual control, and I'll try it again and see if it re-engages. May have been a visibility problem. The cameras may not have had what they consider to be sufficient information to steer the car. Are we ready? Self-steering. Dink! There we go. It's searching. Still hasn't locked on. It's trying to find out where we're going. It doesn't look like it's going to kick in at all. Wonder if I have some kind of creature that's attached itself on the camera or something. Some parasitic animal is trying to glean visual information off of the car by adhering to it. Boy, this heated steering wheel is just a godsend on a cold day, I'm telling you. Well, it still hasn't locked in. I don't know why. I guess it could be the lighting conditions in combination with the road. We'll leave it for just a little bit longer, then I'll shut off the steering part, because it just doesn't look like it wants to play anymore. There we go. Now it does. So why was that? Well, my guess, and that's all it is a guess, is the visual information that was being fed to it. There it's steering. The visual information being fed to it was not sufficient for it to be able to determine exactly where the car was in relationship to the lanes. So that's why it was giving up the ghost, so to speak. And some of the visibility right now is really interesting because the light is coming from the side to your right here, but it's very low in the sky, so it's kind of it's not well defined. It's a low contrast type of lighting, considering it's got, well, it's not surprising at all considering it's in kind of a hazy cloud situation that it's going through. So we have a different kind of light, and then the lines painted on the road here are not the best, not any time recently redone. So the combination of things is probably why I was having a problem. Well, the question is to all, How does this do in the snow? Well, we just had some snow. We had a bunch of, which I'm told by the wife that went out in under circumstances earlier that she said were absolutely diabolical because it was light powdery snow that's loose. We still have it in our driveway. I think they've already cleared the roads because you know, all that salt they put down, which is insane. So it may be clear now. So here we go. We're going to try it. We're on off-road mode, by the way. The reason I did that is because why not? I thought it might help the traction situation. You never know. But we have our intelligent M-Drive, whatever Mazda chooses to call it. Everybody has their own name for their all-wheel drive system. It seems to retard the reaction from the response from the acceleration just a little bit to help with the situation, and it's doing fine. The tires are these Falcon all-season tires, and they're not what I would call heavy-duty winter tires by any stretch of the imagination, but they seem to be doing okay. It also seems that it holds the transmission in the gear longer, which makes sense in a lot of ways. And we'll get her out on the highway here and see what we shall see. It's probably still, even though they've cleared most of it, there'll probably be some slick spots. We're going to find them, and we're going to see how we do. Now, getting out of the driveway is a little bit of a task because it's steep and it's snowy. Whoa, whoa, look at that, sliding all over the damn place. Well, that's a tough test right there, I must say. Oh, when they pick this up, they're actually picking this car up today, or so they claim. How do I, that's the rear. Missed, auto, high, pull. Okay, I'm pulling, and it's not doing any washing. Oh, there it goes. It comes out of the steering arm itself. It looks like that's an interesting choice. A lot of people do that. What can we do about defrosting? Here's a defroster. There's one, and here's front. Now I don't know if that'll activate the side view mirrors or not. We'll find out. Whoa! Can you hear that? Boy, I tell you, there's some blowing going on in that defroster. Now this is one of those weird ass snow. Did I say weird ass? I meant weird snowstorms. Whereas the temperature is hovering right above freezing. Now the temperature, according to the car, is 34 degrees. So it's melting fairly quickly, which is good, because we're supposed to get a whole lot of wind this afternoon. And I'm going to take it off of off-road and put it back on normal. There we go. We're normal now. Normal is, of course, a relative term. Oh, great, the salt man. There he is. Oh, it looks like they accidentally mixed a tiny little bit of sand in with all that salt. Ugh. I'm bitter. I don't mind sharing that with you. I've had every problem I've had with my vehicles in the last 10 years and it's been the last 3 years in particular of their 11-year-old lives has been rust. And it's been rust from the crap they put on the roads. But you know, they don't want to get sued, that's the thing. And people expect to have the highways completely dry just a few hours after a snowstorm around here because they've basically trained people to feel that way. All right, we're going to turn that off now because that's just too much noise. That's just too damn much noise. And put auto back on. Oh, and the auto decided that I should have the steering wheel heat on and the seat heat on all the way. I have not figured out yet how to deal with that. Let's put the rear on. Let's melt that snow on the back. Little do the guys know coming to pick up this vehicle that I'm going to great lengths to make sure it's easy to drive and get all the snow off of it. If only I had a nice big warehouse I could keep vehicles in, but I don't. Probably never would put the money into doing that because I just don't need to. I got more important things I have to spend money on than that. Okay. So, when one ventures, as one does, to the underside of the vehicle, we see amazingly interesting things in our Mazda CX-70. This has a real interesting rear suspension to it, and a lot of good and let us just say engineering friendly kind of stuff, because you can see exactly what's going on very clearly and admire how complete everything is as far as what they're trying to do here. Now, for example, this is a multi-link, fully independent rear suspension. It has a subframe attaching it, which is this structure here, by the way. Whew, this big thing, big solid item that is attached to the unibody construction of the body itself. And then we have our multi-links. We have this lateral link here. We have this lower link right down here. We have an upper link up there, and lots of aluminum. This is all aluminum. This is all aluminum. This is all aluminum. Here's our drive shaft boot and our drive shaft. And here we have our suspender, which is a coilover shock absorber arrangement, kind of like a McPherson strut, although there's no McPhersons here at this time. But a very, very interesting system, and it looks like it can take a little bit of punishment. It's pretty well in the Solera. You got a lot of stuff to make lightweight. You see these big holes in here. That's to keep the unsprung weight lighter, and the lightest it can be is the best it can be, because it allows it to float over bumps and things like that with much greater speed response than it could if it was a big old heavy duty type of thing. Here we have a plastic guard unit to help protect this lower arm and slide you over whatever, probably not boulders or anything like that, because it's not really built for that, but it is nevertheless, it's a nice touch that we're seeing more and more on all these multi-link suspensions. That says, what does that say? That's a R3. That's your R3 right there on there. And as we move across here, we come to our differential up in here. And here we have a little skid plate that's actually not insignificant. It's actually made of metal and pretty stout to protect things. And what we have is a drive shaft. Yes, I think so. I'm looking at it. Yes, that's got it. Yep. Let me see if I can. Hang on there. I'm gonna try to show this to you. Why are we reflecting all over everywhere? But there is a drive shaft going through here. There it is, and also known as a propeller shaft to some of you people. So it has a conventional type of off-road four-wheel drive setup, in that it runs directly off the back of the transmission on a power takeoff, and your computers are all telling things to engage and disengage, because I'm sure this has a clutch system somewhere back here where you can disengage the rear the rear drivetrain as the computer sees fit to maximize your gas mileage by minimizing the amount of drag that the drivetrain puts on the system. So very common, but it's getting more and more sophisticated all the time. From this angle, here's a little better angle of our protective unit. And what's really interesting to me about all this is, if you look forward, look at all the look like metallic protection units. That looks like it's probably plastic or some kind of ballistic nylon, or who knows what it is. Every time I ask manufacturers these questions, I get very strange answers. Like, for example, the skid plate on things like the Toyota Tundra fuel tank is called ballistic nylon. Now, I'm used to ballistic nylon making soft-sided luggage with, but apparently you can make it hard too. So that may be what that is. Or it could be PVC, or it could be who knows what type of plastic it is, but it's not a composite or anything like that. It's still pretty substantial, and you do have metallic elements all along in various places here. So first of all, you have a very aerodynamic lower drivetrain here, which helps maximize your fuel economy, especially on the highway. And then you have a bit of protection to all the things that are involved with this. And as I showed you earlier, we do have a lithium-ion battery. It's a small one, but that is used to power the electric motor, which is all the way up yonder, somewhere in here. And attaches, as near as I can tell, directly to the back of the transmission, and is like a integrated motor assist, which Honda first started back in the late 90s, early 2000s, which is just a little boost for the gasoline-powered engine as opposed to a full hybrid system that can run by itself on electric power. This, I don't think it actually can, but maybe it can. I just don't know. But it also begs the question, when you're attaching it that way, how complex the system is. Does it actually integrate with the front drivetrain or the back drivetrain, or just the front or just the back, or both, or what? I don't know. I'm guessing that probably just the front drivetrain, and the back drivetrain is primarily pure mechanical. So I don't know. I don't have the manuals in front of me to indicate this, but as you can see, we'll look under here, and you can see here is your unibody, which is very well constructed. And when it comes to things like road salt, vehicles like this do a little better. And one of the reasons is you have all these protective things that keep a lot of the salt out. However, salt still finds its way in, and then it can be difficult to deal with if it does get in and rust things up. But fortunately, manufacturers like Mazda do a pretty damn good job of making sure that the components underneath these protective devices are fairly salt resistant. So, and the rust will not be a problem for many, many, many miles. Hopefully, that's the idea. I worry about this right now because just driving this vehicle home from where I was, they dumped a ridiculous amount of salt on the roads because we had maybe a quarter inch of snow. So go figure. It's a thing with me that drives me crazy. But anyway, that is our rear suspension, and it is very sophisticated and very Mazda-like. This isn't the smoothest riding SUV in the class by a margin, but it does have a good controlled ride. It handles very, very nicely and is more than able to take a bit of punishment. So all in all, a very good rear suspension system. Well, I'll tell you, the underside of things reveals all. So let's talk about our 2025 Mazda CX-70. 3.3 Turbo S Premium Plus. It has a base price of $56,650, I believe that is. And our final as tested price is $57,775. You know, I got 25, or well, a couple of times I got nearly 25, but overall I got 23 miles per gallon. And for a vehicle this size with this kind of power, that is very impressive. And so is the rest of the vehicle. It's such an interesting animal in that if you do need those 3 rows, you need the CX-90. But if you don't need all 3 rows and you'd like to have plenty of cargo space, get the CX-70. It's a really, really interesting vehicle overall, and this new inline turbocharged 6-cylinder engine is a really, really interesting piece. Typical of Mazda and how they like to do their propulsion systems. So anyway, nice driver. Take a look if you're in the class for a midsize. It's really a full size in my view. You guys be real careful out there, and we will see you next time.
Do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube, you eat like the tube, you raise your children like the tube, you even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion.